keep it from happening.
So it says in the PowerPoint presentation that China banned it in November of last year. Have you seen any kind of decrease since then in the raw materials coming into the country?
Not really. It comes in from India, it comes in from other ways. It comes into other countries and then comes into us afterwards, regardless if the secondary country is a part of the equation or not. So just as we start to figure out certain patterns and start to backtrack it a certain way, they change the game plan, and then we have to figure it out all over again. And it's hard to go after those people in other countries, so we deal with what's in our backyard and try to help those people that have this problem and really go after the drug dealers and hold them accountable.
Do we have a copy of that PowerPoint presentation, or can we get a copy of that PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, you do. You actually have a copy here.
Can we show it without your permission? Or?
Yes.
And the Senate bill, do you have the Senate bill number?
It was, I had 13447 and House Bill 15281. And what I was going to also, and I think I can do this on a consensus, Mr. City Attorney, is ask for a consensus from the commissioner to have a letter drawn up by the city clerk in our support and have this sent to our state Senator Brandis and also our House Representative Kathleen Peters. So I think I can do that on a consensus if y'all would consider that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, I'll actually, and then what we'll do is actually, you can send the letter out to the commissioners and just have everybody's approval before it's sent out, correct?
I have contacted Tallahassee, just in case anybody's wondering. I've talked to several of the representatives and senators there about this. So it's out there.
Right, I'm just, Madam Vice Mayor, what I'm doing is a letter from the city of Madeira
I understand,
commissioners
yes.
to our
It's
state
better
representative.
than just one person.
Exactly. Thank
Yes.
How many years have we been fighting this? I mean, I'm talking about drugs overall in our
Oh,
county.
my God.
I can think about 55 years we've been at it.
We've always been aggressive as an agency pursuing illegal drugs. It's just the drugs have increased to other types of drugs and this new wave of synthetics over the last 5 or 6 years, and they just keep coming. And then, like I said, now we're seeing certain illicit drugs mixed with synthetics, and it's crazy to think about it. Not just maybe 2 drugs, but maybe 3 drugs together. So, you know, where's it going to end?
They're probably mixing it right here in the back door, right?
I'm sure things are being added to it everywhere. It is a shame. And again, we're doing our best as an educational piece to go out there and educate youth and adults about, you know, regardless your family status, that you should be aware of all these things so you can communicate to your family and discuss these issues, because, you know, it hits right across the board. No one's exempt. I've actually had good friends of mine, as well as law enforcement, firemen, business people, where their children have done things they shouldn't have done. And again, it's not restricted to a low poverty area. You know, it's right across the board. So we're doing our best on many fronts, combined with the aggressive enforcement, and we'll continue to do so.
Mr. City Attorney, before I ask my next question, I believe we want to do some type of ordinance on this, so I'm going to ask consensus of the commission if y'all would like to move forward for the city attorney to put something together.
Yes.
Yeah, we should.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, you good with that?
I'm good with that, but I want to go back to your polling the commission for approval of the form of the letter. My suggestion is that you just go ahead and prepare the letter, or have one member of the commission prepare the letter and then you sign it, but I would not suggest that we poll the commissioners as to the form of the letter.
If it's okay with the commission on the consensus, I'll put together a letter. And also, what I probably will also do is bring this in front of the mayor's council next month, so that way I have 24 of the municipalities maybe on top of that. Is that okay?
Perfect.
And Lieutenant, what I'm going to also invite you to is this year I'm the president of the Mayor's Council of Pinellas County. If you see our assistant clerk, C. Marshall, before you leave, I can get you on next month's agenda, present this in front of 24 municipalities.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, I think you're doing a great job out there. And the city of Madeira Beach supports its sheriff's deputies out here on the beaches, and besides our entire county here in Pinellas County. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. City Manager, next item 3. Discussions on restriction on use of public property to prohibit boat docking in certain areas.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hand that off to the vice mayor as well, and I think Deputy Luckett has probably some commentary to add to that as well as the city attorney, but I'd hand it off to the vice mayor and she can get it started.
Basically, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Luckett because he is dealing with the problems, and he's the one that came to me and was explaining what was going on. He's also the one that pulled the ordinance from St. Petersburg so that we would have something to go on.
Good afternoon.
I did it to you again.
You did. You're good at that. That's okay. One of the issues we're having, and I think probably Dave can even attest to some of the issues, is the individuals, some of the liveaboards, some of the boats that we have out there, not the residents, are generally coming ashore and they're parking their boats or docking or tying to anything, seawalls, fishing piers, what have you. Recently, I've responded to a couple of calls, or deputies have, and they would be tied up to like the fishing pier, the new fishing pier over at Memorial Park, at 9/11 Memorial Park. And there really wasn't anything that we could cite the person for. In calm waters like today, not really a big deal, it doesn't cause any damage, but in rougher winds or rougher seas, it pulls on your docks, and one day we were out there and it was pulling the fishing pier back and forth. I thought it was going to come down. So this particular ordinance that St. Pete has, it helps restrict that the person has to dock somewhere that it's authorized to dock. They just can't pull it up on shore or to a fishing dock or to the fireman's dock out here and just tie anywhere. It's not in any way restricting residents. It's just some issues that we've had and not really had an ordinance to address those particular situations.
Deputy Luckett, real quick, I know that we had this issue about 5-6 years ago with some overnight parking on some actually docks over here at City Hall, and I thought we created something at that time to take care of it. Do we need a little more teeth into what we already have, or do we need a complete new?
Unless the city attorney knows something I don't, we do have some overnight
Right.
ordinances on docking overnight. This isn't what they're doing. They're tying up for maybe an hour, maybe 5, 6, 7 hours. For example, I'll point out to the firemen's equipment out there on the water. That's not something you want somebody to come up and tie a boat to. And the residents aren't going to do that. They have a dock, they're going to go to the city marina, they're going to go to John's Pass. What some individuals that don't want to pay or are trying to avoid legal means of docking, they'll just come up and tie right to that pier and then come to shore. So it's more of a short term, not an overnight thing. We really don't have a problem with anybody continually coming and tying to a dock overnight. Not that doesn't happen, but it's not something we're seeing.
Anybody have any questions for the deputy?
In the St. Petersburg ordinance, it says the posting of signs. Wouldn't that be enforceable if there was a sign posted at the dock?
There needs to be an ordinance to back up the sign. In other words, we can't just put a sign up that says, don't do this, without an ordinance that says it.
Or overnight? I'm just asking.
We may just want to change the existing ordinances that we have to tighten them up, but as for the prohibition actually has to be set forth in an ordinance. It just can't be on the sign. So the sign just gives notice of the ordinance itself.
Okay.
And I believe that's what we did, is we created an overnight ordinance on the dockage originally, Mr. City Attorney. I just can't remember what the verbiage was, but I knew we were having an issue with that overnightage on public docks.
We'll take a look at it, and if you give us the direction to do this, we'll go ahead and bring it back to you for you to take a look at where it's going to be placed in the code.
I think it's fairly simple. I think there's probably a consensus to,
That's fine.
and I imagine Deputy Luckett, between you, Dave Marsicano, and the city attorney, because Dave, you know every dock in the city, so you know where the issues are also.
Yeah, and he does bring up a good point. It's not just docks. If any given day, if you go over the Tom Stewart Bridge, you'll see maybe 2 or 3 dinghies that are up on the shoreline at Bicentennial Park, and sometimes they're there shortly, but it's what they keep in it. Is it tied up properly? Sometimes they tie them to the city bench there, which, you know.
And since we're on that subject and it kind of rolls into the whole thing, is there anything you can work with McDonald's? Because I know that's been an issue too. The dockage over there to McDonald's on the water.
That's something we're working with Publix on. Publix is doing a great job of trying to redo some signage. They actually own the dock there. And they're very supportive of your efforts in the city to keep the waters clean and to monitor that. But they are actively working on that.
consensus to allow the city attorney, Deputy Luckett, and Dave Marsicano to move forward with this?
Absolutely.
With the, to look at the old ordinance or to
To,
draft a new one?
to address this in a new ordinance? If
Absolutely.
it's, okay.
Thank you.
Luckett, thank you very much. Dave, thanks. And I'm sure the city attorney will do a fine, outstanding job, as he always does with our ordinances.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next, discuss authorization, the city attorney to prepare an ordinance adding a definition of residential property to section 82-2. Mr. City Attorney.
It's recently come to my attention that when we had received a letter relative to the short-term rental enforcement that we're doing, that there is no definition in the city's code as to what a residential property is. And so I would like to add to section 82-2, this is where you keep all your definitions, a definition of residential property so that there is no question about what it actually is. I've set forth the definition that I would like to use, and I've also prepared the ordinance already, and it is also in your packet. It's a fairly straightforward definition, and I'll just read it out loud. Residential property. It's going to be defined as property which is zoned R1, R2, and or R3, and which is used for residential use or which is vacant. I understand that there are other zoning districts that we allow or currently have people residing, but those aren't the areas that we're trying to capture. So I think that and I understand that the short-term rental ordinance only refers to R1 and R2, but when we define it this way, R3, and it requires any renters that are renting property to go through the registration process in R3 as well. So that's why I wanted to include R3.
Would that include condos?
Yes.
Fantastic. They'll be happy to hear that.
It'll give us the ability to make them register. It just won't give us the ability to enforce the short-term rental ordinance against them. So that's the reason that it's been brought to you. Obviously, it's an ordinance and it would require 2 public hearings and 2 readings.
Is there any questions?
No.
Do we have consensus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, review of city noise ordinance. Mr. City Attorney.
Recently, and I would say within the last 4 weeks, we had gotten a call, our office had gotten a call from an attorney who is currently representing someone that has been cited for violating the city's noise ordinance. It went to court. The lawyer also represented individuals that were cited for a similar ordinance in St. Pete. And in that particular situation, the city of St. Petersburg dropped the charges as a result of an argument being made that our noise ordinance is their noise ordinance was constitutional. The lawyer was contacting us to see whether or not that the city would be interested in dropping our 2 cases because the same argument is true. Those cases are listed in your staffing. But what it really boils down to is that there is a section, and I'll just read it to you, section 34-89, where certain exceptions are set forth. And there's a specific exception that religious worship activities, including but not limited to bells and organs, is accepted out of the noise ordinance. And the argument there is that it's unconstitutional to enforce it against everyone other than a religious organization. And so the way that we need to address this is, instead of having the entire noise ordinance struck down as being unconstitutional, is to go back and basically delete that exception from your ordinance. And then we can move forward with citing those same noise violations again, where we don't have to worry about a constitutional argument. So we did authorize the dismissal of those 2 citations so that we didn't have to address that issue in court and have some court tell us that our code provision is unconstitutional. So we can change it and then go back in and we can make the argument that it is constitutional. So I'm looking for your authority to go ahead and change your noise ordinance to delete that exception so that we can continue to prosecute the noise ordinance.
Commission, what's your pleasure?
Absolutely.
Do you have you had a problem with that, your own personal self?
We have not addressed that issue before, but I know that here in the city of Madeira Beach, it has been an issue, and it's been a way to enforce, bars or restaurants that are playing loud music and holding the bar manager or whoever is in control of that particular establishment that night responsible for the noise violation. And I think that it's a good way of enforcing your code, to have your deputies to be able to have that as an additional tool in their toolbox. But right now, I think that it's challengeable. So obviously, it's happened a couple of times in the last couple of months. I'm not sure whether or not it's happened before, but these two defendants have got the right lawyer making the right arguments, and I think he's correct. And so we just need to address it now, and we can move on and continue to enforce it without that exception.
That's good.
Quick question.
Things like that get around real fast, but ordinances.
Sorry, Commissioner. Quick question. It says the freedom of speech, obviously, in the St. Pete, and that's included in bells and organs for religious activities. That's freedom of speech?
But
Legalese? Is that what you're saying?
we need to take out the word religious worship. And so that is the way to resolve it so that we don't have any arguments.
So can we just put limited to bells and organs, or no?
Yes, we can say bells and organs, and anybody that rings a bell then or plays a loud organ, that would solve the problem.
So, again, I know that there was some issues with the bells and stuff at the Church by the Sea. So there's been some complaints on that. So how's that going to work in the future? That's going to reopen those wounds?
I don't think so. Obviously, if they are too loud and someone makes a complaint, we have the obligation to go out there to see whether or not, it is occurring. But if you take out the religious activities and you include this exception, they would still be able to, in my mind, use bells and organs that are louder than a standard stereo situation.
Sure, I understand what you're saying.
So
I understand completely, but I just think it's going to open a can of worms, but that's all right. We'll take it out. It's already challengeable, but you're not going to get any worse.
You have consensus?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Next, discussion on proposed fee schedule update. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Board of Commissioners. Again, you have the fee schedule in front of you. We continue to polish this, if you will. If you reviewed your material, you can see that the fees are relatively non-substantial in terms of change. You'll notice that there are no marina fees. Dock A is currently probably in its final stages of being reconstructed, and we want people to come back and get acquainted before we adjust some fees out there. So you may see something towards the end of the year, or maybe in the next budget, in terms of marina fee changes out there, if you want to ask Mr. Marscano's here for any of those. But other than that, you can see that our fees are basically rec related and building department related and relatively insignificant. We would ask for your approval.
Is there any
I
questions?
think it's really no question. I think it's good that we're right on that.
And I know Mr. Andrews is here in the audience. Is there anything that Mr. Andrews would like to say at this time, Mr. City Manager?
I think it's relatively
obvious.
It has to do with facility rentals. We added a facility fee for concerts. We're trying to get $1.50 per ticket. Just the small things that make throwing those concerts instead of a wash, a money-making venture. This last summer, we had to do a couple, I don't want to say it gratis. I think we probably did all right on all of them, but we did it for a simpler fee, only to kind of put us on the map. And now that we're on the map, it's time to turn it into a bigger profit center. So other than that, if you look through the red print in your packet, it's relatively insignificant.
Is there any questions from?
This would come back as an ordinance change, obviously, at the BOC meeting.
Do I have consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Bring this in front of the
Yes.
commission's
Yes.
ordinance?
Yes.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
And I just want to throw out there once again, Mr. Andrews, I say it every time your department gets brought up, but I mean, I've run into so many people have used the facilities out here, what outstanding job you and your staff has done, and I know they're standing in line to use it, so thank you very much. All right, next update on discussion with Reddingtons in Pinellas County regarding emergency services. I imagine we might as well go straight to Fire Chief O'Neill on that one.
Correct.
Chief O'Neill, how are you doing today?
Outstanding, Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Good.
Updating on the Reddington issue. The EMS coverage in the Reddington has been a long-term, well-documented issue. The county has spent a considerable amount of money. And basically what I wanted to do is just give you an update on what's happening in that area. We've been in discussions with all three mayors from the Reddingtons, as well as Mayor Palladino, to discuss that with the county and try to work out some options to get them the same level of coverage that's happening in the rest of the county. What the issue has boiled down to is the lack of a facility up there to put a rescue vehicle in. So right now, we're in the process of discussing that further with the county and trying to come to some resolution on how we're going to be able to do that. As you know, we are contracted with all three Reddington communities for fire protection, but that does not cover the advanced life support EMS coverage. So that's pretty much where we are with that. Mr. Mayor, have you been in contact with anyone from Pinellas County?
Actually, Chief O'Neill, I have a meeting this Friday with the county administrator and to discuss what we were talking about funding. I don't know if we want to go there yet.
Right.
That number, I believe the funding, and I guess we might as well throw it out there, is becoming public knowledge. And and just to let you, the chief, know, and I believe the chief knows this, and the commission, I have the full support of the three Reddingtons have come to me and said, you have our blessings to go up to the county and speak for us. And like I said, the chief said, the lapse of coverage for EMS is, the last spot is the Reddingtons. I've been the president of the EMS Advisory Board for this last year. I've been on the EMS Advisory Board for Pinellas County for 4 years. We've worked throughout the county to take care of the lapse of coverages. This is the last hole in the blanket out there. So what we're trying to do, not only, I think it would expand the Madeira Beach Fire Department in a positive way without any heavy cost, but what it would do is keep the service levels throughout the county as one solid unit.
My initial conversation with you, Mr. Mayor, and with Mr. Crawford was, well, why do we care? It's, the Reddingtons. Well, we do provide fire protection coverage for them up there. We think it'll make us a stronger, more efficient department, and we feel that because of the economy of scales, we'll be able to do our job here in Madeira Beach more efficient and more effective than we have in the past. There should be some cost savings with running a larger type scale operation than what we currently have. So that's our hope.
Wasn't there some discussion some years ago about Madeira Beach being the station for an EMS truck? Do you remember anything about that?
That was some discussion a while back. I don't know if anything's happened with that recently. The issue is they're not here long enough to be stationed here. You see one down here at the 7-Eleven store, but they're constantly being pulled into town. That's why Pinellas County pays us as part of the ALS first response contract, because they know that fire engine stays on the beach. They can't pull us into St. Petersburg, or, we were here the other day on a scene, and our EMS vehicle that was responding to the ambulance was coming from Drew and US 19. So that's a long time to wait, and that's why your fire service stays in our town and in our area. While we may respond out mutual aid into Seminole, there's always a unit available to come in to cover our town.
And Chief, if I'm correct on the numbers, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the average response time for all emergencies, medical or fire in Pinellas County is about 4.5 minutes, but for this area is around 7 to 8 minutes.
I don't know
If it,
the standard in Pinellas County, they want to have advanced life support on the scene 90% of the time within 4.5 minutes. We achieve that easily here in Madeira Beach because of the contract with us for the fire engine response in there. For EMS coverage, that's just not happening. And in the Reddingtons, they're running about 7.5, maybe that's where we got that, about 7.5 to 8 minutes on a response time. For a critical patient, that's way too long to wait for advanced life support.
And this unit would be an ALS, correct? Not
Yes, sir.
ALS.
Yes, sir.
What's that?
Advanced life support or basic.
Advanced life support, so we've got paramedics on the truck, rather than just EMTs that do basic life support. You know, EMTs, basic life support, they can do basic like CPR, some bandaging, splinting if you break an arm. Advanced life support, you can do tracheal intubation, cardiac drugs, defibrillation, all the advanced life support procedures.
Now, wouldn't it make sense with all of that? Because we're the central part of the island. If there was an EMS truck around, it should be in our garage. We're right in the middle of everything. Where does Treasure Island, how long do they wait for an EMS truck?
They're in a similar situation to us.
Now we don't have to cross the bridge. They don't have to wait in case the bridge isn't. Why can't somebody, Mayor?
Well, I'm about
Why
to tell
don't-
you
why
why.
don't you get right
I'm
on
about to
that?
tell you why. I'm about to
Do
tell
we
you
have
why.
room in our new area over there?
Um,
We have a beautiful new station that maybe that way could, sell the
We do. You know, it's something the mayor's probably gonna tell you here. I shouldn't steal his thunder.
Yeah, go ahead, chief. Do you know me? This is my soapbox, so.
This is your
You
soapbox.
go ahead, chief.
Go ahead.
You go
Mayor,
ahead, chief.
Mayor, please.
No, I'll get too passionate about
Somebody
it.
please tell me.
Well, what it is,
Yeah,
Madam
spit it
Commissioner,
out.
what it is under the way the county works right now, it's a contract for the county, which is Paramedics Plus. So Paramedics Plus puts out so many units out here. What they do is they look at the call volume coming around from the county. We used to have the issue here in Madeira Beach, we didn't even have a unit stationed out here on the beaches. The response times, I know that I had several times that I rode with the fire department and went, where's the transport unit? We're sitting here, where's the transport unit? So having a discussion with the county, we actually finally, the last, they've been out here for what, 2 years, 2.5 years now, that we've actually got a unit. You'll probably see them hanging around now, the 7-Eleven, Archibald Park, or
see 'em.
somewhere right in this area. Before, they were based over on the other side of the bridge, which would a lot of times add about 2.5, 3 minutes to the response times. Where you would watch Madeira Beach Fire Department get on scene locally here. I believe y'all's average calls are 3.5 minutes. Y'all set the bar. And that's why probably we have that 4.5 minute in Pinellas County. But where you would be, actually, your transport units would be anywhere, sometimes 15 minutes, which is not the way it's supposed to work in Pinellas County under the contract with Paramedics Plus or Sunstar.
We've made enough noise out here, and the mayor on the EMS advisory board, so we have more units stationed out here on the beach now. But when it gets busy in St. Petersburg or Largo or wherever, they pull those trucks off the beach. We're like the first ones to go into town, so that's a problem for us.
So that's why they're hanging out on the beach. See, I see them around all the time, and I thought, I guess it's a nice place to hang out on the beach.
Yep.
But I understand what you mean.
Right.
And I want to tell you guys, years ago, we had our own transport truck, right here in this little town, right here.
And
I'm voting for her for mayor.
And
She
we would
gets it
like,
on the EMS
we would
board.
like to have that again here in the future. That's a,
You probably know that history of the fire
oh,
department.
yes, it's definitely a political issue where the private enterprise that the county contracts with for EMS transport doesn't want the fire department to transport, because it's about the money that's being made.
All we roll for
It does.
And what
Yes,
needs to
ma'am.
happen, Madam Commissioner, eventually, because you're seeing the number of transports, I believe, that Sunstar's reporting all time, I mean, the last 2 years, and it's happening, if you look at the numbers, because of tourism. We're seeing more people coming in. They're having more transports. There's actually times on a non-emergency call where some of our units are waiting for over an hour for a transport. So, I mean, you're tying up a unit on scene when you talk about cost savings, where these guys should usually be in and out in 15 minutes, and then the patient along, heading to the, and then back on, I guess it's, not back on call, but,
In service.
yeah, back in service. But you have cost savings, then that way you don't have to use the mutual aid. Let's say these guys are down at Johns Pass for an hour, waiting for a transport unit on a non-emergency call. In the meantime, there's another call that comes in where they'd have been available, but now you've got Seminole running over here.
Yeah.
So now Seminole's on a, 7-minute, 8-minute response time.
At least.
Yeah, and I mean, so now, let's say you're having a heart attack here, where these guys would have been here 3.5 minutes, now you're waiting 7 minutes. So eventually, it does need to go to a hybrid. You have, 25 fire-based units that are available right now.
Countywide.
That the county really doesn't allow them, but I think we're working on some things, able to get those units to turn the key on them. So eventually, it would be nice. I think it's possible in the next couple of years where you'll see a hybrid system, and you will see a transport system back here in Madeira Beach.
That's good.
Sorry for the long answer.
No,
but
that's
it's-
all right.
There's so,
I like
Pat, there's so much politics and fire, I had no idea.
No, it's all right.
I had
But
no idea.
Another thing I wanted to ask, just, since we have the new park, we haven't had an emergency where the helicopter came to land. Now, where's he gonna land now?
We've got some other designated areas already set up for landing, so we may have to go up to the bridge on the north end or go over to the school. Church by Sea, if it's, it all depends on the time of the day and what's going on in the parking lot. That area is a little bit more sketchy, if it's down in that area and we notice when we're driving by that the parking lot's empty, we'd obviously use that area.
I didn't think about asking Sam about that, but now we're discussing this.
In Chief, and I'll just kind of go on, the area they're looking at this station is pretty much right around the old wine cellar.
Right, 173rd.
137th.
Really?
173rd, that's right in the center of the area up there.
And I'll throw it out there because I know Mayor Queen has no problem with this because I see him every day to discuss it. The city of North Reddington would be donating the property. I believe we're looking at a cost of $3 million to build the station. We're looking at a temporary system right now, but before we get to that, the other mayors want to see light at the end of the tunnel. They want to see the funding for the station before let's do the Band-Aid station. Because we could probably turn keys on this month or two.
I could put a trucking service up there in a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then we could start actually having paramedics on scene in 3 minutes or less up in that area,
Right.
which takes care of the problems of the labs.
Yeah,
But to be able to build the station, we need the funding, which is $3 million, and that's why I'm meeting with the county administrator on Friday.
Perfect.
That kind of sum it all up?
Close enough,
Okay.
close enough.
So I guess you're looking for a consensus, or we're looking for consensus from the commission to be able to allow the city of Madeira Beach to move forward on this, Mr. City Manager, or are we just bringing it up to let everybody know what we've been doing?
No, the only issue here is the direct relationship with number 8, and I think the relationship is becoming less and less, not apparent, but relevant, I guess, because I think at the end of the day, the upgraded apparatus that we want to buy, even if we don't do what we're talking about here and we just concentrate on Madeira Beach, is probably a good investment for the community. And so, I was the biggest cynic and probably critic of buying a ladder truck, and I've been convinced, regardless of what happens with the Reddington, that's why it's kind of on the agenda today. Vince is going to take over on the financing, but I think at the end of the day, staff's recommendation, the chief's recommendation, and your city manager's recommendation is to go after a ladder truck in conjunction with pursuing what we possibly can do in Reddington as well.
Oh, yeah, we need to have a ladder truck. We've needed that since we built these big, tall buildings out here. If it takes 7 minutes to get here for somebody that's having a heart attack, how long does it take to get that big ladder truck from Seminole
For
Hill?
Pinellas Suncoast,
Yeah.
the last fire that I saw that we needed one on Johns Pass, Pat, was, I believe it took them 15 minutes to get the ladder truck on scene.
Something like that.
Yeah, the whole place could be burnt down in 15 minutes.
Lieutenant, I'm sorry, could I ask the lieutenant to please come up?
Oh,
Chief?
I wish you'd ask my lieutenant
Because
to come up here.
The
Mayor,
lieutenant was in charge that evening when I saw them running around putting the fire out.
we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have about
That's, he
justification.
needs a little
for a
practice
ladder
in answering some questions. I know the lieutenant's all excited about this. He even wore a nice white clean shirt for us.
How's everybody doing?
Good, Lieutenant, how you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Glad to be here.
And just going back on that, I think we had that discussion a little bit the last time at the fire down in Johns Pass at the hut. And what was, did you look back at the records to see what the response time for Pinellas Suncoast was on that?
We do. I actually went back and, just using John's Pass as a reference point, pulled some numbers. And the truck that came that night is actually the second closest truck to us. Truck 29 out of the main station in Seminole would be a little bit closer, but not much. If you're using John's Pass as the reference point, Station 29 would be the closest. They have an approximately 12-minute response time into John's Pass, where obviously that's a problem. If there's fire through the roof and people hanging out the windows, you kind of get to the point where, hold on, give us 12 minutes and we'll come get you. You know, that's not something that we want to ever be put in a position of doing. Second closest ladder truck would be Truck 28 out of Pinellas Suncoast, which is up close to Seminole High School, and they're about an 18-minute response time in John's Pass. when, I mean, it all basically comes down to building construction over the last few years. You got codes, everything's having to be built 7 feet up above sea level, and they're building 2, 3, 4-story townhouses on top of that. It's, honestly, it's a no-brainer. The longest ladder we carry on our engine currently is 24 feet. That gets us, if we're lucky, to a second-floor balcony, especially if it's built up to code with that 7-foot allowance for the floodwaters. It's really pretty self-explanatory, honestly.
And Lieutenant, I know that the ladder truck, you all had one here and had a chance to drive around the city. It works through all parts of our city to be able to get
It
access.
does. We got it everywhere we needed to get. And just to clarify anything, the ladder truck will be capable of doing every single thing our engines are currently capable of. We'll have the same amount of water, same size, actually a bigger pump than the truck we're replacing. We'll actually be able to carry a few more tools for car wrecks, things along those lines. So there's a lot of things that a ladder truck's going to bring other than just a big, giant ladder.
And I know the current engine you're using now, I believe the city of Madeira Beach actually had to buy it because they had an engine and it went down and they actually had to buy what was out there. So this is being put together more for the needs of the city of Madeira Beach, where the last one that was purchased was just, you needed a fire engine, that's correct? So you've got something that'll work a little more for water rescues, and things like that?
Correct. It'll carry everything we currently carry for water rescues. In addition to, we're actually putting the entire department through dive class now. And we've got a couple rapid diver packs to where if a vehicle were to go off a bridge or off a seawall, whatever, our medics can don rapid diver suits quickly and be in a car getting somebody out of the water, underneath the water, in a matter of 30, 40 seconds. Ladder truck will have a compartment specifically designed for those. And there's actually, I don't know if we'd ever get to this or not, but there's West Coast departments that actually respond to ladder trucks to water rescues, and they'll stick their ladder up in the air just to use as a spotter, which is a pretty good idea. I don't know if we have the staffing currently to do that, but it's certainly a thought.
Does anybody have any questions for the lieutenant or the chief? Y'all just got a heck of it, a 45-year, and I'm gonna tell you what, commissioners, if you ever get a chance, even if it's for a couple of hours, I'm sure the guys are glad to have you over there, and go spend some time on one of their shifts. I mean, you will learn everything from mopping floors to running stairs to carrying, folding hose, how to jump in that engine. But I'll tell you what, you jump in that engine, don't be the last one in or you will be left behind.
In closing, that's exactly what I told the mayor when he decided he wanted to come work at the fire station for a day. I said, you can come over there, but you've got to work 24 hours just like a regular firefighter does. And the rest of the crew was like, well, how are we going to treat him? He's the mayor. You treat him just like another firefighter. So when they cleaned bathrooms, the mayor cleaned bathrooms. When everything, mayor's like, well, what do I wear in? I said, wear some PT clothes. I said, because we start our physical training, our exercise program at 7 o'clock in the morning. The last thing I told him, don't be late. And he wasn't. So anyway, Mayor, Commissioners, we always appreciate your support and look forward to many years of service to the city in our new ladder truck. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Lieutenant, thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe, do we have a consensus to move forward with these projects?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. We're good?
Yeah, I think this, Mr. Mayor just dives right into item number 8, where I think we've very much got
Covered it.
good consensus with the finance director. Obviously, a ladder truck is a more expensive apparatus, but, and that would probably change how we would finance this, so I'd hand it off to Mr. Tenaglia at this point, but obviously, I think we're going to proceed with the ladder truck and put it out for bid, or if there's a state bid that we can buy it off the chief, I'm not sure, but with that, I'd ask Mr. Tenaglia to comment on the financing option.
Yeah, and this may take, try to keep it short, but I'm not going to be available at the February 9th commission meeting where we formalize some of this, so I'm going to try to provide as much information on the financing tonight as I can, or today as I can. Just to follow up on the discussion, obviously we have funds budgeted for the replacement of a fire engine, and I appreciate the firefighters' comments regarding the need for a ladder truck over a fire engine because, like the city manager said, that would dictate how we move forward with the financing. So with that in mind, we do have an appropriate funding source already planned for the replacement, which is the Penny for Pinellas Local Option Sales Tax Fund. That fund is specifically set up for these types of purchases, so there's no issue there. I will say that the specifications that have been developed to this point based off the sheriff's bid are looking at a total cost close to $690,000, which is more than the initial amount budgeted, which was $650,000. So part of the financing objective was to work around that budget issue. But then to follow up on my comments on the December 22nd agenda, one of the ultimate intent or ultimate objectives from staff in pursuing a financing option as opposed to the cash or pay-as-you-go scenario is to preserve the city's flexibility. That's something that I've talked about quite a bit. We've had plenty of capital projects discussed and initiated over the last few years, and to continue our ability to pursue those capital projects, the financing provides maybe a little bit more of a flexible solution for us. So on December 23rd, I released an RFP that essentially asked banks for proposals either on a loan structure or a lease structure to provide their best rates on a short-term financing structure that would use only the penny for Pinellas, remaining installments of the penny for Pinellas. So like I mentioned at one of the previous meetings, it was only my goal that we would pursue a financing structure if in fact we could use only that security. In other words, not requiring any obligation of the general fund or any other funding sources. So again, with that in mind, we released that on December 23rd. On January 8th, we received responses to that RFP, and I'm pretty happy to say that we got 10 different responses back from 9 different banks. The city should be pretty proud of that. That's an unusual number of responses, and I think speaks to the level of financial activity that we've had take place over the last few years. We've definitely become a little bit more familiar to the banking world than we may have been 4 or 5 years ago, so that worked out in our favor. I provided the results in your packet. Give me 1 second to get there. So we had 10 different responses. Several were loans, several were lease structures. We shortlisted it to 2 different options, those being BB&T and Hancock Bank. They were within 1 basis point of each other, Hancock at 1.59%, BB&T at 1.60%. And ultimately, it's my recommendation that we pursue the proposal from Hancock Bank, which is the 1.59% option. That's a fixed rate of interest for a maximum amount of $750,000. That amount is just to allow for some flexibility. There's no intent to actually use the full $750,000. Just based on the initial financial plan, we are in fact going to be pledging only the penny for Pinellas funds. The final maturity will be scheduled for December of 2019, which coincides with the end of this current term of the penny for Pinellas. If that's renewed, we'll deal with those types of issues later, but at least for this current installment, this basically takes advantage of the remaining 3.5 years of that, or almost 4 years of that schedule. There is no prepayment penalty, so in keeping with the flexibility theme, if we were to choose to pay it early, we can do that without any type of make-whole provision or otherwise any other penalty along those lines. And with that said, the Hancock proposal at 1.59% is extremely competitive. It's my recommendation that we move forward with that. And I'll stop there. There's a few other things I need to address, but I'll stop there and open up to any questions regarding that proposal or any others.
Does any commissioners have any questions for the Finance Director?
Answered all my questions.
Yeah.
No prepayment,
And do I have a
1.59.
consensus for us to move forward using the recommendations of the Finance Director?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Finance Director, I had a chance the other day to sit with you and a couple of bankers in a meeting, and I'll tell you what, you set them on their ears, and this young man does one hell of a job for the city of Madeira Beach, so Vince, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate the consensus. I do want to address a few other issues since I won't be here for the regular meeting, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So in the short term, these are the next steps, and at the February 9th BOC meeting, I'll make sure we have all the necessary resolutions in place to do this. First, we need to increase the budgeted funds for the fire apparatus itself. Again, that number is looking like it's going to be closer to $690,000. There are some possible equipment trade-in items at the time of purchase that may result in that number being reduced. I'm not exactly sure, but In any case, we'll probably be looking closer to $690,000. We also need to add funds for the debt proceeds because the initial plan was to purchase it with cash. And we have to add all the corresponding pieces of the transaction. So we have to add cost of issuance to the budget. My estimate for that is $46,800. We have to add debt service costs. Again, that's going to be at a fixed rate of interest at 1.59%. And that'll take care of all the financing resolutions and amendments at that point. We will also be authorizing the actual, assuming that between the fire chief and I, we can actually get all the specs lined up and everything from the bid and whatnot, we will plan to authorize the actual purchase of the fire apparatus at that meeting. We will authorize the cost of issuance expenditures to bond counsel, city attorney, and financial advisor team. And then I will also have the bond counsel team available to answer any questions on the legal resolutions. And Tom's familiar with those too, so he can certainly do that as well. But you'll be covered at that meeting for all of those necessary approvals. And then on February 17th, we have a tentative pre-closing, and I think the vice mayor is going to sit in on that for the closing of the necessary documents. And then on February 18th, we'll finalize the wiring of all the funds, and at that point, we would issue the PO to proceed with the actual fire apparatus. And that's over the next couple weeks, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't mention there's also some longer-term issues that we need to address. And I've hinted at this over the last couple months in working with the financial advisor team, and we've talked about the need for policy development, and at the last go-around, you gave me the direction to proceed with a couple additional policy improvements, those being rate policies and debt policies. And I just kind of wanted to get us all on the same page quickly on that front, because this is the chance to do it. We have, obviously you had the fee schedule item on the agenda today, and now you've got the debt item. So we need to kind of formalize those types of actions into a more professional policy that we can use going forward. And I would just kind of remind everyone that this is our fourth debt issue in 26 months, which is, I don't think I have to tell you, much different than anything financially that the city took on in previous years. So we just need to make sure that when we're in the market so often, it's to our advantage to have these types of policies in place. It's to our advantage to have long-term financial projections in the budget, because both to you internally and to the banks externally, that information basically suggests the way that we are going forward. And so one thing I mentioned to the city manager the other day was that the first few rounds of these debt issues were, I guess, fairly, known projects. We knew there was going to be some involvement on City Hall. We knew we would be moving forward with undergrounding. We knew we would be pursuing some road projects. Hard to argue for the need with a fire engine. But moving forward, I think there's maybe a little bit more uncertainty with what the next big project really is. And so I don't know if it'll involve some type of public-private partnership or some combination of cash and financing, but whatever it is, I think it's sure to be more complex than we've taken on over the last 26 months. So I just want to make sure that we're aware that there is a need for those policies, and I will be coming back to you for implementing those in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Mr. Finance Director. Does anybody else have any questions? I believe we have a consensus to move forward.
Consensus, yes.
Mr. Mayor, the only comment that I would like to make, and Vince is right, there's always going to be something on the horizon. The only thing that I would ask is, let's not purposely go out and try to invent something. We've done a lot here in the last couple of years. It'd be nice to get caught up on some road projects, get caught up financially on some other things before we start throwing out the words high and dry or anything like that. But let's get some things done here that we really need to get taken care of, such as roads and stormwater, and get those utilities buried on Gulf Boulevard. That's going to take years. It's going to take 2 or 3 years. If you want to start planning, let's look in year 4 or 5, not years 1, 2, or 3.
Mr. City Manager, I'm sure you have a consensus on that. We don't want your beard to get any grayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Appreciate that.
It's okay.
Good job.
Yeah. Don't worry, 52 or 51, it'd be different. All right, next discussion on pedestrian cross lighting on Gulf Boulevard. And Commission, I brought this up, and actually, I want to thank the city manager for putting this on. I'm sure everybody saw the picture in the packet. Traveling up and down Gulf Boulevard, you know, you see it. You see how dark these crosswalk lights are when you see people in the centers. And I just noticed a couple of cities to the north of us, Indian Rocks Beach, Clearwater. They have those little island-like lights. We've got the money right now where we're putting in the electric and water for the beautification. I don't think it would be that much of a cost, so all I'm asking for is a consensus to allow the city manager just to get some pricing on that. If I would be going after the funding for this, would actually be through bed tax dollars. I'm going to be on the board for funding coming up. There's about to be $20 million for shovel projects to come out of bed tax dollars, and this would be something I would be going after besides a couple of other projects in the city of Deer Beach. So, like, again, I'm just asking for a consensus to see if I can get some city manager to go out and get some pricing for this. Or if there's any other ideas on lighting.
If I can see these crosswalks painted red. Otherwise, you're not gonna get it. I'll tell you that right straight up.
Yeah, that's another one. And you know, that's one we'd have to talk to DOT. I know that the municipalities, the municipalities that have it done, actually Gulf Boulevard belongs to them, or it's county. We're actually state.
Well,
And I
just
think
go out there and
there's,
paint it. Just paint one though, and they'll come in and they'll, slap you on the wrist and they'll say, you
Well,
shouldn't have done that.
The only issue with that is when there is an incident and they haven't given permission, they're gonna say, well, we weren't liable because we didn't.
Well, then they ought to get out here at night. Who are these guys? Let them come out here at night and drive down this boulevard.
no, and Pat, you're absolutely right. That's why I'm looking
I
at these
mean,
lights.
it's
because
dark.
It's
We
dark.
get those little lights.
Yeah.
But in the daytime,
It's dark.
I mean, you don't see that stuff as fast as you ought to.
I agree with you.
There's so much going on in this city that people are looking to see what's happening.
It's ironic that you bring that up because I think Mr. Marscano brought it up today at the department head meeting, and we had that, we probably visited this a year and a half ago about red is for stop and stop only, and not to slow down or be cautious of pedestrian. And so, because we wanted to do that, I think maybe, Madam Commissioner, that might have even been before you returned to the commission, and so that's a no-go, at least for now, but I'd certainly agree with you. I think most of the motoring public would probably agree with you as well, but I saw the mayor's picture, and I think it does make a lot of sense, and Mayor, I just want to make sure that we're given the proper direction. I think FDOT has obviously solidified a contract with somebody to do these things. I think I'm going to use our usual contact and just find out, how much those cost per median. I talked to Mr. Marscano about it today, and he said, Shane, I'm there today doing work, running the electricity, running the piping, so the time is now or it's not gonna happen. So I gotta move pretty quick, and the other thing is that unless you secure funding, we don't have budget for it. And so, I don't wanna call it it's not
I need to know how
far-fetched.
much money I'm chasing first, Mr. City Manager. You can tell me how much money to go chase, and I'll go run it. Yeah.
That's a great
I'm
question.
thinking $15,000. You're thinking,
It's gonna be a
Yeah.
lot more than
Yeah.
$15,000.
Yeah.
I would imagine each one of those lights, just on the project alone that we've done, is each one of those pedestals per median is gonna, the two of them will be at least $10,000 not installed. How many medians do you have in town?
we got 11.
6.
6?
Yeah, you're talking about $100,000 to $150,000 project
Well, if
easily.
you want to count 2 as one.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's not gonna be cheap. No matter, we can light up palm trees in John's Pass for under $500,000.
Right now, all I'm asking for is to see if I can get consensus to chase some prices,
Oh, yeah.
and then I'll
Well,
go
you-
chase some money.
That's just it. I wanna be specific on, I can't chase the
Yeah.
pricing because it's their median, their road. They're
Right.
gonna tell us what we have to put in. So where was that picture taken? Where was it?
Indian Rocks.
Indian Rock. So I'll just call Bob Esposito and say, hey, you did this up there. What was the pricing on it? And while we're doing Gulf Boulevard, why don't we insert that into the project while the mayor hurries up and hustles and hopefully secures some funding? So that's just so you're aware of that.
Yeah.
I can't just.
I mean,
call-
I know,
call
it's
the
gonna,
lighting
we're gonna have to work
contractor.
together on this, because,
No, I'm just saying, they're not gonna let us just do whatever we want to their road. We have to use their contractor, so that's how I gotta go. So if it's IRB, that's who it is.
like I said, there's about to be $20 million out there, and I'm going for a fair share, and I know there's another project that we're
Get
working on that
19.
too.
Get 19 of that 20.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
the others can
Yeah.
share that
You
million.
can do it, you can do it.
I'm battling two 800-pound gorillas in the room, brother.
So
And they both think they bring all the bed tax dollars into Pinellas
I'd
County.
be willing to bet that that's between a $100,000 and $200,000 project in Madeira Beach.
And to be honest with you guys, I'm telling you what I'm gonna chase for is about $2 million for the city of Madeira Beach for projects.
So I will make that call before we go home today and see if I can
Okay,
get some
thanks.
pricing on
And
it.
just, so I got a consensus from y'all to, we
If I
can
get
get,
my red pen, hey, tell me.
well, I think we can get a can of red paint pretty cheap, Pat.
I'm
We need to
telling
go out
you,
there at night.
I
We don't
wouldn't-
need lights to paint red lines, do
I
we?
wouldn't be afraid to go out there and do that.
We'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you're the best painter we got, so we'll get out of our
Yeah,
rollers.
if you do something
Look
like
at
your
Tom,
driveway.
look at Tom looking at us like he says, I'm gonna be on those two chips out of jail.
He's worried about the Constitution.
No,
He's got
probably
3
leave us
commissioners
in.
over here he's gotta worry
Those
about.
guys are always worrying about us.
I'd like the lights to look like umbrellas.
Hey, I would get a rest, so that would.
I mean, y'all like that idea of the
We'll
lights?
just
I
go there,
mean,
get Steve sandwiches,
you know,
rest,
it's just,
I'll
it
just
showed,
kinda
you can
relax
see
and get my
people
head
at night
screwed
in
on
those
straight like
crosswalks
that.
down there, so I liked it. And just, ours are dark. The light's correct from, Progress Energy. You have to have overhead lighting, you know, street lighting so close to, and they're there. I mean, they're where they're supposed to be by law. Clearwater, when I talked to Clearwater, actually had a meeting with Mayor Creticus. He says, well, ours are a little brighter because we put LED lighting in. I don't think we want to spend the money to put LED lighting in as we're working to put, you know, new light poles in and, yeah, when we do it. So, but I don't think we want to do it now. Or-
When I said timing's critical.
Well, I know.
It is out there now, I mean, we are gonna be out there for the next year, probably a year and a half during it. So that we-
Right.
To be able to put in these little bollard type lights is not gonna be problematic. The time is now, though,
Right.
to go after the money and find out what the cost is.
Right, cool.
At the next meeting, guys, I just said, I everybody to have their mic on. We've got a hand, but there's gonna be a time throughout the entire meeting, and we'll cover most of what they said throughout the presentation. But everybody's gonna have their mic on. You gotta get this thing down without it working. Try to get the standards here at the next meeting, so they all have to be very conscious of this. Right on, and we're not used to it, but.
So you only want us to turn it on when we speak? And then we can turn it off?
Leave it on all you want, but it's gonna cover.
You see him driving that pretty new truck? There's gotta be all kinds of new buttons in that thing.
The mic's on.
All right, saying that, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 3:39.
God.